Okay, class, so we're going to be diving into printmaking this week. And what printmaking essentially is, in its like rawest form, is leaving a mark onto a page. And you can do that in different ways. We're going to be doing relief paintings, which means that your pigment goes on top of something, and that's what's being picked up. So instead of the pigment being inside, it's on top of. So the first thing we're going to do actually is talk a little bit about substrates. Have any of you guys heard that word before? Have you seen it in art? Do you know what it means? Let's talk about that a little bit. So are you guys familiar with the word substrates? Give me like thumbs up, thumbs down, a little bit. Okay, kinda. Okay, so substrates are pretty much another word for surfaces that have something on them already. So a lot of times if we're going to be drawing or painting, we're starting with a blank canvas. We're starting with a white piece of paper. That's something that's free of a substrate. It's just plain and it's just ready for us to be working with. Now, something that is a surface with a substrate means that we have something already there for us to work with. So that'd be like if I put down some watercolor on a piece of paper and then I want to draw over it. The watercolor would be acting as a substrate. So since we're going to be doing some relief prints later on in the week, I want us to start off by making some substrates. So I found a super fun process for us that makes colorful prints using shaving cream and food coloring. And I have some examples that you guys can pass between you. So these are all using this process. You can see that you can get a lot of variety out of these with the color choices, with the patterns that you guys are going to do. This one was kind of a mistake, but I still want to show you because it's really beautiful. It's just what had went wrong was I had dunked my paper in water accidentally, so a lot of the ink had kind of washed away. But you can see how that makes a really interesting effect, and the paper picked it up a lot differently than it did something like this. So pass that between you guys, kind of look at it, see if you can get some ideas. And then I'm going to do a bit of a demo. So I'm going to show you guys the way that we're going to do this. And then what I want us to do is plan. So the fun thing about these types of substrate making is that a lot of it is mysterious. So you don't really know what your print is going to look like until after you've printed it. But we can still plan up to a certain extent to make sure that what we're getting is something close to what we're expecting. And ways we can do that is by looking at how we want our patterns to look, looking at how we want our color schemes to look. So after I'm done demonstrating this for you guys, I want us to just sketch on a piece of paper. You can use the markers, get some colors down, kind of figure out a color scheme, and we'll work from there. So the first thing we're going to want to do as we're making these prints is you want to shake the shaving cream. And it's important that when we're doing this, we're not using like the gel that turns into foam, like we just want straight up foam, because that's going to give us a layer of something that's going to dilute our colors. So when we're putting our pigment straight down, it's not just going to be straight up color, but the more we mix it in with the shaving cream, the more it'll dilute itself. So I'm putting like a pretty hefty layer on there. And then I'm going to take one of these little popsicle sticks and just kind of smooth it down. That part doesn't really matter. I just think that if you smooth it down, it helps you later on when you're making your actual pattern. So we're going to do that. And then let's figure out our colors. So for the sake of cleanliness in this class, we have two bins. One is going to be for cool colors, one is going to be for warm colors. The reason we don't want to mix these is because let's say we put blue and orange together. Those two are complementary colors. They're going to really muddy together when we mix them, so we want to avoid that as much as possible. So this is going to be our cool color bin. So someone shout out to me a cool color that we should do for this.
Green.
Green. All right, thank you, Nathan. We're going to put some green on here. So I'm putting a couple drops, as you guys can see. And then this is the point where I'm going to start making a decision is, do I want my piece to just have a ton of vertical lines? Do I want it to swirl around and be kind of woogly? Let's do some woogly lines. Let's get it a little swirly. And if we're thinking of like what we want to, so if we're going to like make a drawing or a painting that has a specific mood, we can get our substrates to match that mood. So if you want it to be kind of serious, you can do straighter lines. If you want it to be a little more fan kind of see, you can get some twirls in there. So you can get your substrate to match what you're going to be doing later on. So maybe I decide that I want to add another color. Right now I'm just going to leave it with the green. So then what I'm going to do is take my piece of paper, and I've cut these out bigger than we'll need them because later I want us to pick our favorite parts and crop them to our composition. So grab a piece of paper and you're going to put it face down over the parts where we have our pigment. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to press with an even amount of pressure to make sure that it's picking up as much of the ink as absolutely possible. And this is the part where it could get kind of messy. So as we're scraping it off, I want us to do this in the sink. So what I'll do is I'll grab my bucket, and walk over to the sink, take my piece of paper out, make sure I don't throw it at anyone or grab it on the floor or anything. We want this to be as clean as possible. And then using the sidewall of the sink and this little plate scraper that I conveniently made, scrape downwards, and it leaves that behind. So the more drops of food coloring that you put on, the more color you'll get on your paper. I only put a little bit for the sake of this, so a ton wasn't left behind. But you can still see what it did. So you see the pattern that was left behind. You can see how some of it got more diluted and some of it is really bright and saturated. So now we're going to do our planning, and we're going to run a couple prints of these. So today I want us to make at least 4 prints for substrates to be used later. So I'm going to pass a piece of paper to each of you. I'm actually going to cut this down a little bit. And then use this to maybe swatch some colors, see what you like, and keep in mind that we're separating our cool color bin and our warm color bin. If after we've completed 4 prints each, we decide that we want to start mixing some colors, we can. We just want to make sure that everyone is able to get their 4 prints nice and clean and crisp before we start to muddy the colors down. So take like 5 minutes to plan your colors and plan what kind of shapes and patterns you want to work with. Are we planning it on here? Yes. Or, okay.
We're using the markers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So should we just take out like the red, blue, green, and yellow markers to use?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or yeah. You know.
Yeah, red, blue, green, and yellow. And the more you make it, the more it'll start to mix. Like you can see, the one that I had just made, I don't know how to put it down, but the one that I just made was really sharp, really crisp, straight up green. You can see this is one of the first prints that I did. This is one of the last prints that I did. And instead of there being so much white on the page, you have this like immense amount of desaturated color in the background. So that's eventually what is going to happen. The more we work in these stitches, the more that they're going to mix the colors together, which makes for really rich prints. So with a process like this, the more you print, the better. If you find that, oh, here it is, the one that's just super, super crisp. If you do find that it's starting to get a little muddy and you want it to be cleaner again, we're going to use this, scrape it upwards, toss it in the sink, and then we can start fresh. So take 5 minutes, sketch out your ideas. I'm going to go ahead and clean this off for you guys so you have a nice fresh surface to work off of. Great things about this process is it's going to make our class smell really nice.
Oh, that's not cheap.
That's not good already.
Imagine this in my itty bitty dorm in the middle of the night.
What was that word you were saying? Substrate? Like S-T-R-A-I-G-H-T?
I could actually write that on the board.
Okay.
So you guys should be done with your sketches by now. You got some ideas? Oh man.
Pretend that's green.
That's fine. I mean, if you guys wanna stick to, since we have a very small class today of 2 people and we have 2 bins, we can just do your color set, we each get a bin. Yeah, let's do that. So don't worry about it. It's fine. Just know that those colors will eventually turn into green as you're working. And Nathan, your colors will kind of turn into orange too.
Cool.
I'm gonna get you guys started on this one. I just want to cover what I did in this bin to make sure that you're not getting any leftovers of my green. Okay. So I want you guys to come up out of your seats. This is gonna be our workstation for this, just so we can condense the mess, make sure we're not getting this all over the classroom. And I also want to be able to keep a nice watchful eye over you guys. Make sure we're doing this well.
Make sure don't make any more mistakes.
Yes. Okay, there you go. And this is, oh. And here are the colors.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, that one, yeah. Use. That's fine. So nice.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of time to like get it all down.
And here are some papers for the actual printing.
You said we're doing 4.
Yeah. I mean, for sake of time, as long as
Yeah.
we each have like 1 or 2.
Okay.
And that is there.
Is this good?
Yeah, that's perfect. If you feel like you need to rinse your hands before you keep going, you can do that.
My students would have a ball with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is more for like a high school setting, but if I did this for middle school, I would definitely have the shaving cream already put out, already smoothed, ready for them to go,
Yeah.
just to avoid any additional messes.
Someone would definitely enjoy touching somebody.
And then just a pro tip with the yellow, since it's a super like saturated color in the bottle, it'll need a little more diluting. So depending on what your pattern was, do you have
It was
your
just
pattern maybe?
messy, yeah.
Okay, so maybe start to swirl that with the shaving cream.
Now?
Because if you print it right now, it'll come up as orange. Yeah, I learned that.
Is it stirring or is it like smoothing?
It's a little bit more of a stirring.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you see
I see what's happening.
here,
Yeah.
like those are the super orange parts.
That is like a really orange yellow.
Yeah. You can put even more shaving cream on top if you feel like it's too bright.
That's okay.
Well, yeah, this is a super fun process because it doesn't really require a whole lot of skill or concentration. You guys can really experiment with it and have fun with it, and the results turn out super cool.
Ooh, the red is like.
Well, I like that you use different line weights in this sketch. Look at that. I'm gonna have you guys write your names on these too. I want all of the prep work that we're gonna be doing this week to be turned in for your final grades.
Can I do a second popsicle stick?
Yeah,
Can
of
I just
course.
like?
That works too.
How big are our final?
Our final, well, for our class's sake, they're gonna be really tiny. So
Okay.
we're looking at this. So that's what I was saying earlier about we're gonna be printing bigger than we're gonna be needing. So we're
Gotcha.
gonna be cropping parts of our composition. So one of these will make like about 6 substrates. One of the great things about doing so many multiples is that you have options to choose your best. So instead of just choosing the best of one, you're choosing the best of like 6 or 10. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
So So remember,
Right, oh, that's.
yeah, here's your paper.
So we just gently press it down, right?
Yeah, nice even amount of pressure. And you want like all of your paper to touch the foam. Even if there's not a lot of ink on the foam, you still want it to grab onto as much as it can. So you can be even more firm with it, yeah. Squish it down. Which is also like the best part of the whole thing, because it feels really nice.
Blows the waft up.
Alright, so the scraper's in the sink. So put it against the wall. And then scrape down as you go.
Oh, I don't think it's in here.
Is it
Or I'm
not?
not seeing it.
There's another one. Shout out to Iowa Wildcat for this place.
Good call.
How are you?
You want another scraper, Nathan?
Huh? Yeah. Nice. I love that.
Oh, that looks great. Wow.
I just rinse this off or should I not?
I would rinse it off and make sure you can get as much of the shaving cream off there as possible. We can wipe it down with paper towels, whatever. Just
Am I doing it what?
You're getting my love project. I said single.
Yeah, we want to keep these as dry as possible, since today's week is today.
Should
Not a
we get
week.
like all the shaving cream off of the paper?
Get as much off as you can. If there's like itty bitty bits, just wipe it off with a paper towel. So like,
Okay.
Becca, what you have
Let's
there,
do that.
that could come off with a paper towel. But down there, you're gonna want to scrape that off as well.
So when you wipe it with a paper towel, will it smear the?
Yeah, it's the ink onto the paper is like really absorbent. So like if I were to pick up a little bit of the shaving cream onto the paper and then scrape it to a part that didn't have shaving cream, it'll pick up then. But if I like tried to wipe it off afterwards, it wouldn't.
Is it a special kind of paper?
It's just cardstock.
Okay.
Yeah. I just
So
gotta.
it's a little bit thicker.
Yes, yeah, you don't want to do this with like printer paper. I learned that the hard way. It'll just crinkle and it won't scrape very well. But this is a 110-pound cardstock. And it's nice and smooth too, so it makes for nice clean prints.
I think your students are having a good time.
It looks like they're.
Yeah.
Got a little bit wet. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
You guys
And
want
then
to-
ideally we would have a drawing rack in our class, which is where I would leave them.
Just a little bit.
Okay, I can clean that off. Let's try to get one more print done for today, and then we'll clean up. These look really beautiful, guys. Another reason why we want to work with some nice color in our background is that our print is going to be black. So if we did black on white, it would just be a lot more simple than if we had black on a substrate. Got some fun Christmassy colors going around there.
How dare you say that?
Hey, Christmas is the best. Always. Christmas is a state of mind.
Yeah,
That's gonna print really well. Hopefully. That's probably good. You're welcome to make one too if you'd like. Everything's already set up.
Just out of curiosity, if you had more time, could they actually just rinse them in the sink?
I think if the paper was different, they could.
Okay.
So that's what this was. there was so much shaving cream I couldn't scrape it, and then I dunked it in water, and I was like, maybe I can just wash it off. And it ripped a little bit at the top,
Okay.
and it just kind of curved.
Okay.
But I think this would still make for like a really nice print.
Is there a second scraper?
It's in
There
the
should be, yeah.
Oh.
There's one paper towel left here. I'm gonna go ahead and throw away your guys' sticks, but each of you need to clean your own buckets.
Wait, is that again?
I'm gonna throw these little sticks out, but you guys are gonna have to clean your buckets.
Oh, okay.
For time's sake, we don't have to clean them, but if this was a real classroom, you would need to clean them. Okay, and I'm gonna press your guys' papers as they're drying so they're nice and flat. But before you leave today, make sure your name is written on the back of these, so we know whose is whose tomorrow.
Okay, I think this one was a bit of a travesty, but
Do you wanna do another one?
no, I think this ink where I put it against the wall is just more wet than I realized.
Oh, that's fine. We'll wipe it down as much as we can. And then if worse comes to worse, you can.
It's not.
Here's some paper towel.
We put these
So
where?
if they get two prints out of one, like they can print again right there?
Yeah, it would just be a different sort of format. Alright, write your names on the back. Make sure your tubs are clean and everything's thrown away. Alright, and then once everything is clean and the bell rings, you guys are free to go. Welcome back. To your seats, everyone.
Tardy.
Do you have a late slip?
I'm ready.
Alright, so, as we get started, let's talk a little bit about what we did yesterday. So do you guys remember, what did we do? What was our project?
We talked about substrates and used shaving cream as a substrate.
Yeah.
And we made these really cool, I think the word is abstract, paintings.
Yeah.
And with food coloring.
Yes, awesome. That is exactly what we did. Thank you, Nathan. So today we're gonna step back a little bit. We're not gonna keep working on these. We'll come back to them. But today we're gonna focus a little bit on carving. So do you guys remember what type of printing I said the process with our shaving cream prints was?
No.
Come on. Yeah, can you say that again?
Is it relief printing?
Yes, it is. So relief printing, the ink is on top of a surface and then we're working over that. So we're gonna be working with some relief prints today. And our final project is gonna be really intricate carving compared to what we're doing today, but this is just to get us used to the tools, get us used to the safety procedures. Carving can be really difficult. It can be a little dangerous, but I know you guys can handle this. I know you guys are gonna be safe, and I'll be here the whole time. But I really want us to focus on safety procedures today, getting used to the materials. We're gonna be working today with these rubber stamping pads, which are gonna feel a lot different than some other things that you would work with, like linoleum, which is what we're gonna be working with tomorrow. Well, not tomorrow, but the next day. So these are kind of just gonna be a really great introductory material because it'll get us used to the carving without the amount of pressure or detail that something like linoleum would require. So I'm gonna pass each of you one of these little pads that we'll be using later. And I'm gonna have you guys watch me work, so I'm gonna come over to you and we'll do this. So this is an example of a little rubber stamp that I carved out earlier. And you'll notice that there's just really simple lines. That's all we're really gonna be doing today. just for the sake of skill acquisition. So these are the tools we're going to be working with. These are little gouge tools. They're incredibly sharp. So for that reason, we have a lot of procedures that we want to be sure that we're taking care of while we're working. I'm actually going to write these on the board, and we're going to be coming back to them multiple times, because if there's anything that you learn this week, it is these safety procedures. These are incredibly important, and I cannot stress how important they are. So key rules for printing. So what's, from your guys' experience and things that your parents have taught you, what's kind of the number one rule with when you're working with something sharp?
Don't run with it.
Don't run with it.
I don't know if that's number one, but
If you are gonna walk around the class, how are you gonna hold it?
Away from the sharp part, away from.
Yes. So we're gonna hold it downwards. We're not gonna point it at anyone ever. And we're not gonna hold it up.
Because I'm sure you can imagine how awful it would be if I'm running around like this and I trip on something. It's called a gouge for a reason. Okay? So we're not going to run with it. We're going to hold it downward as we're walking. And then while we're working, can you guys think of anything that would be important?
keep your hands away.
Yes, this is the most important rule. Hands away. So a lot of times this is actually the hardest rule to abide by, because as you're working with it, it's going to slip around a little bit. We don't really have the mounting tools that we would use and that would be helpful to have it stay in place. So your innate response is going to be, oh, we'll hold it down as you're working. But you never, ever, ever want to carve towards yourself. So that's the fourth rule, is you're carving forward. Never towards yourself. And never towards other people. So if I'm sitting next to Nathan and I'm carving and I'm doing my project and my linoleum gets slippery, and if I'm carving like this and my hand is away but I'm sitting next to him, if I slip, I can hurt him. So you're not only worrying about your own safety with this, you have to worry about the safety of the people next to you. So never carve towards yourself and never carve towards others. And then when I say carving forward, I mean we're going to be moving vertically upwards as we're carving. So if I'm carving to the side, that's more chances that I'm going to slip. If I'm carving towards me, that's an automatic no-no. So carving upwards and away from yourself. And then the last, this is more of a tip than a rule, but as we're carving, you want to carve at an angle that's like not completely 45 degrees, but like a 35-degree angle. So this way, when your tool is sitting against it, it's almost flat, but it's still getting the leverage that it needs. If we're going 45 degrees, you're going to be carving straight into the block, and it's not going to be doing a whole lot. Same with if you're carving straight upwards. So a nice like 35-degree angle, you want it to be pretty flush with the piece itself, but just enough of a leverage in there that you can carve in. So 35-degree angle. All right. So how do you guys feel about that, knowing these things now? Do you feel pretty ready? Okay. So like I said, the materials that we're going to be working with today are a little bit easier. And before we start, I'm going to do a little bit of a demonstration and explain to you the difference between these tools. So if you look at them, they look pretty much the same. They have the same handles, they have the same little holders, but the tool themselves are different. So if you were to compare these to anything else that you're familiar with visually, what do they look like? Yeah, exactly. So we call this a V gouge and this a U gouge. So the V gouge is meant for details. This is going to go straight in and thinly, while the U is more for carving out more pieces at once. So if you're looking at the example I did, you can see which lines are made by the V and which lines are made by the U. So today I want you guys to use both of these. and just make a set of vertical lines. And tomorrow we're going to be printing them into a pattern, which you guys will have the freedom of how you do it. This is just an example that I did. Is you're going to stamp it over and over again and kind of make a nice pattern. Pro tip, this is a really nice way to make some fun wrapping paper, and Christmas is coming up, so there's that. So we're going to be using these, making our vertical lines, and then tomorrow we're going to learn how to print these. So each of you have a little rubber stamp in front of you. I do have more carving tools if necessary, but I think since there's just two of you guys, we can just rotate back and forth between using these. So again, I'm always going to work with my hand behind the tool, and I'm going to demonstrate this way because I don't want to be carving towards you guys. So I'm putting my hand this way. I'm working at about a 35-degree angle, and I'm going to anchor my arm as much as I possibly can to the table and use my body weight to push it forward. And the anchoring of the arm is really important because it'll keep your angle right, and it'll keep your pressure consistent. So if I'm working like this, then I can slip with my wrist, I can move around, it'll mess up with my print. But if I'm keeping myself really anchored, then I can get a nice carving, and it's consistent. Okay, so as you guys are doing this, I want you to go from the absolute bottom to the absolute top, get nice consistent lines, and I want to see that you're using both the U tools and the V tool. So go ahead and get started. And if you're ever unsure of the rules, back to the board. So remember, always carve forward, vertically, never towards your hands, never towards anyone else. Yeah, it's hard to get it all the way to the ends because the rubber will kind of try to move around the tool, so just get it as close as you can. And make sure you're keeping yourself as anchored as possible. That'll also help with any like wrist pain from the pressure. If you're doing this for like hours and hours at a time, like printmakers often will, it can start to put a lot of strain on your wrists because of the amount of physical weight that you're putting on your body. So just make sure that you're anchoring as much as possible. Your wrist should be fairly close to the table.
I don't even want to switch.
I want to switch.
That's it.
So maybe try dropping your wrist a little bit, give you a little more control. You look good. These dividers, anyone's,
Those are mine, but you can use them.
like, can I get them, like, you need them?
No.
Don't know where my plexiglass is. So that's important. No?
How many? Do you need the other one too?
I just need one.
That's fine.
Do you prefer the green or the blue?
No, it doesn't matter.
Okay, thank you.
I was gonna try using one of those cut-up plates, but I don't think it would work very well. You guys have really nice line quality going on. Yeah.
I've missed printmaking.
That looks beautiful. Use one of the pens and go ahead and write your name on the back of this. And then go ahead and clean up for the day. Make sure all of your shavings are thrown out. Make sure your tools go back to where they're supposed to be. make sure your stamp has your name on it and that you return it to me on my desk.
Oh.
Alright, class is dismissed. Welcome back.
Tardy.
Yet again. Alright, so debrief, what did we do yesterday?
We carved into rubber stamps.
Yes. And what is a stamp without ink? So today, we're gonna press our block prints. So, got some really exciting processes here. But first I wanna just double check how we felt about yesterday's carving, how we felt using the tools. What were any questions, comments, concerns? How was it for you guys?
I thought it was fun.
Yeah?
Yeah. Feel good.
Good. Okay, do you guys feel like you're ready to move on to the next part?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Fantastic. So I'm going to demonstrate this next part for you guys. We have this beautiful green plexiglass, and we have block printing ink, a print roller, our stamp, paper, and then ideally we would have something to kind of burnish the ink with. For today's sake, we'll be using this little guy. This is just another roller, but it's clean. So the first thing we're going to do, take this off so I don't get it inky, is put some ink down onto our plexiglass. And this is a water-based ink, so it does dry fairly quickly. So we want to make sure that when we're working in thin layers. We're keeping all of our tools clean in the meantime so things don't get like gunked up at all. So I'm going to roll my roller over the ink and make a nice surface to grab the ink off of. As I'm doing this, I'm going to try to get it as smooth as possible. You don't really want a whole chunk of ink on one side and nothing on the other. To keep it nice and smooth, consistent pressure. And then some people like to grab their ink straight off of the plexiglass. I personally prefer to roll it over the print itself. I think that gives you a little bit more control over the amount of ink that you're grabbing. So what we're gonna do is put our stamps over the back of one of these, which I'll give you. And this will just give us a little bit of height off the table so we're not getting any ink on the table. And then you're gonna use the roller to roll ink onto the stamp, and I'll show you guys what this looks like in just a second. And you'll see that it picked up all the raised parts. So this is a great example of what a relief print looks like. So all the things that we carved away are gone. All the things that we didn't carve are left on there. So I'm gonna make sure I've got a nice amount of ink on there. Remember I said it does dry really fast. And then place it down. Hold this as I'm burnishing it and press downwards. And this will just give me a nice amount of pressure over my print, make sure that the ink gets as evenly distributed as possible. With these rubber stamps, it is easy for them to slip, especially if you have a lot of ink down on your stamp. So I like to try to hold it down, move forward, move, look down, move forward. And then, as we peel our stamp off, leave the nice little mark. So you guys have pretty much creative liberty over how you want to stamp these. I just want to see a pattern of using your lines vertically and horizontally. In the example that I showed you guys yesterday, we have vertical, horizontal, vertical. You can mix them up, you can make like a checkered pattern, you can put them all over the place. I just want us to kind of look at the prints that we're making, and we're going to talk about print quality. What print quality means is what it sounds like. What is the quality of our print? How does it look? How is the ink transferred? Is it clear? Is it crisp? Are there any spots where ink is missing? Are there any parts where there's too much ink? So being able to do multiple runs like this, like if we fill a whole page, this is a really simple stamp, but we fill a whole page with it, we're able to see our consistency throughout. What did different amounts of pressure do to the print, and so on and so forth. So I'm gonna run one more, holding it down on the back.
it off. And there you go. Alright, so I'm gonna pass this off to you guys. And we'll get started with making some of these prints.
If you would like to, I want to see at least maybe 2 rows of just straight up how the stamp looks, so we can judge the print quality nice and clearly.
Okay.
But then you can overlap it however you like.
I'm seeing a nice use of moving it vertically and horizontally. That's great. That's how you get a nice even spread of the ink. So in a regular class period, we would have 30 minutes of studio time,
Get them as many prints as they want, different types of paper. Maybe use one substrate if they had extras, and get some nice print quality. So I'll stop you guys after maybe like 3 prints, and we'll talk about the quality.
Did you say it's cute?
Yeah.
It's like to slide.
It does, especially if you've got like a hefty amount of ink.
Yeah, I think maybe too.
If you have what you think is too much ink, then you can probably just run the print without rolling the.
You were supposed to.
That scared me. That's all.
Okay. And then we.
Go ahead and lift it off. Yeah. Yeah. So it's fine. Let's talk about the print quality of this. Nathan gave us a wonderful example here. So
Uh-oh.
so what's going on in here? What can we, if we're looking at this really closely, what are we seeing?
The ink spread.
Yeah, we're seeing a little bit of pooling. We're seeing some smudging. So basically what happened is, like I said, these are really slippery, and the ink makes it even more slippery. So if we put a little bit too much ink, which we can kind of see how the ink spreads on here, whether or not it's too thick. So over here it's a little bit thick, and it'll, by the time you guys run your second prints, it'll dry down a little bit, so it'll be good. But what we're gonna wanna do for the next one is maybe, if we use the same amount of ink, we won't press it down as much, we'll just kind of touch it to the paper, or use less ink in the same process. And then on the opposite side,
Yeah.
we've got a little bit that comes off the edge here. So we're gonna wanna make sure that when we're putting our stamps down, we wanna get nice, even, consistent pressure throughout, nice, even amounts of ink throughout, so that the print is consistent.
Can I have the block again?
I can get you guys. These are gonna be the surfaces that you're carving on later. These are linoleum blocks. And by the way, all of the print quality things that I was talking about, same things happen to me. So it's not like a skill issue, it's not like you're doing anything wrong. It's just, this is the wonders of printmaking, is sometimes you don't know what to expect until after your print is run. So I'll leave this here so you guys can compare my failures.
Sometimes those inconsistencies is what makes it look neat when
Mhm.
you're creating a pattern.
Yeah, totally. Happy accidents. Oh, side note, that's another thing that I thought of for a subplan. There's this game by Bob Ross called Happy Accidents, and it sounds like such a fun activity. It's so basically you split up into groups of like 6, and you draw scribbles, and then you put the scribbles face down. People have to pick up 3 scribbles, and then they're given topics, and they have to turn the scribble into something that falls into that category. It is so much fun. My family bought it over Thanksgiving, and we played
it's
like
an actual
it's
like,
an actual
board
game. Yeah,
I think I've heard
Yeah.
of that.
It
Like
is-
my friend said she has a Bob Ross game, but she didn't say
it
what
was
you do.
so much fun. There was another Bob Ross game there too, but I didn't know what it was. But yeah, and then you give each other points. There's like these little tokens with squirrels on it, and the amount of squirrels is the amount of points you get.
Uh,
It's So much fun.
That's cool.
I think that would be a cool thing for subplan is just play a game.
Yeah.
Make happy accidents. Speaking of happy accidents, that's really pretty. It's like a ghost.
Have you had the opportunity to teach those at Marion High School?
I taught a lesson on printmaking in the style of Gustav Klimt. So that was really fun. They were doing a lesson on, or unit on Klimt, and I gave them, yeah, she kept calling him Klimt, and I was like, no, honey. But I gave them, this is actually one of their linoleum blocks that I had extra that Davis let me keep. So I cut it in half, and then I gave them a handout of patterns that Klimt often uses, like the triangles with the ovals in the middle, and like I gave them a sheet of like, you should use these in large scale, these ones smaller, and these ones as fillers, and then they had to sketch it out and then put it in marker and then carve it. They never got to finish it, which was really, really sad, and they constantly kept asking me, Miss Bonica, when are we going to do it again? When are we going to do it again? When are we going to finish our carvings?
Because you weren't there every day.
Yeah. And because Miss Davis didn't feel comfortable doing it without me in the class because she wanted to have 2 people monitoring as much as possible, because it's a 27-kid class, so there's a lot. But they loved it. And they also had a little more control over the safety because they had those things where you mount it to the side.
Yeah.
All right,
I
class.
disobeyed you.
I know, it's okay, it's okay. For the sake of time, it's fine.
Do you have
Plus it
all
looks
your
really good.
hours in?
I need to come in for 1 extra hour tomorrow because I couldn't go in on Wednesday. Yeah, emergency circumstances and whatnot. But after that, I'll have exactly 45.
Okay, good
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
And Grow?
I'm going in Friday and Tuesday, and then I'll be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, class, wrap up your prints. Let's make some last-minute notes on print quality.
I like how you overlap.
Yeah, those look really nice. I'm glad you didn't listen to me. It looks like you guys got some really solid prints. So hopefully this gets us well acquainted enough with these processes that when we do our final project, we'll be able to get some nice print qualities on the substrates that we made a couple days ago. So go ahead and clean up, put all your tools away, wash off all the ink from the block print, and we'll be good to go. I'll wash this off during your guys' studio time in the next part. So write your names on the back too. And then, yeah, that was something I was supposed to tell you to do before. Hey class, welcome back. So let's talk a little bit about what we did yesterday. We ran prints. We learned a little bit about what print quality is. And we talked some more about what relief printing is and how that works. Let's talk about some highlights. What did you guys learn? What did you guys find interesting? When we're looking back at yesterday's lesson, what were some things that stood out to you?
I like how you could just keep doing it over and over, and it was a pretty quick process, and you didn't have to redo it, but you could kind of change how the print looked based on how much ink you did or how hard you pressed.
Yeah, totally. That's a super satisfying thing about printmaking is you can spend hours and hours making a really nice carving and then minutes making 30 prints. Cool, I'm glad you like that. Nathan, did you have anything?
I liked the process of seeing what I didn't carve into the block show up.
Yeah.
Things that I hadn't even thought about because I was thinking about patterns carving.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really interesting thing about relief is that a lot of times we can kind of get this object fixation into what we're carving away that we forget about what we're actually carving into. Yeah, that's a great point. So today we're going to prep for our big assignment. We're going to be doing a lesson on identifiable characteristics. We're going to be kind of
branding ourselves by these silhouettes and identifying traits of what we think are identifiable to us. So this is a little example of the prints we'll be running. So you can see that these three figures look very different. And if you were to know these people, you would know that the traits are very accurate to who they are. This one's me, that's my sister, and that's one of our best friends. And the things that are identifiable to us is my sister wears her hair in braids a lot. I wear my hair down a lot and I have really thick eyebrows. And our other friend wears sunglasses all the time and she always wears her hair in bun. So those are some things that are identifiable traits that if you see this person next to their silhouette, it makes sense and you know who they are. So today we're gonna talk about what work that is representational is. So let's do a little bit of an example of this. Give me maybe a character, it can be fictional, it can be real, someone that you think is a very identifiable character that if you see them somewhere, you know exactly who they are within like a second's notice.
Just Day from New Girl.
Yes, that is a wonderful example.
Thank you.
Okay, that marker's dead.
The green one is good. So yes, it's good.
Okay, Jessica Day. Are we all familiar with this character?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So what are some things that are super identifiable?
Her bangs.
Yeah.
I feel like she's always wearing a dress.
Mm-hmm.
Her glasses.
Yeah. I'd say those are probably the main things, right? So what we're looking at here is pretty typical to identifiable traits is we see something about hair, something having to do with the face, and then something having to do with clothing style. So for the sake of our prints, we're going to be focusing on this and this. We want to have something to do with hair and something to do with face. So if I were to draw a silhouette portrait of Jessica Day, I would definitely start with the bangs and probably some curly hair and some glasses. Kind of looks a little bit like Harry Potter, but close enough. So we have the identifiable traits that tell us a little bit about the person that we're looking at. So as a way to get us started, let's do you guys still have the, oh, they're here. Just for sake of saving papers and not having to take a million things home. I want you to write a list of things that you think are identifiable to you. Maybe it's the way you wear your hair, maybe it's a facial feature like your eyebrows or your lips, maybe you wear glasses or sunglasses, but you should have something that identifies your hair and something that identifies your face. And then if you have other traits that you think are very significant to your characteristics, go ahead and write that down as well. Okay, as you guys are wrapping that up, go ahead and make your final notes. Now I want you to share with a partner, but instead of sharing what you wrote, I want you to talk to your partner about what you think their identifiable traits are. So as an outsider looking in, when we're observing something, we might be observing something that the person themselves might not be seeing, but that might be more accurate than what they themselves perceive. So I want you to talk to 2 or 3 people, get some quick feedback of what do you think they are identified by. Go for it.
His hair.
I feel like your hair, even like you don't wear it maybe the same way all the time, but
No.
you can always tell even from behind that you're you from your hair somehow. And I think you wear up. You wearing your hair up is
Yeah.
I think significant. You do that a lot. Usually actually like I don't want to say, but do you wear it in a bun more?
Yeah, I wrote down a button.
Bun.
Yeah.
I'd say your hair being in a bun.
Yeah.
Hopefully, after talking to a couple people, you guys got some ideas of what other people think are very identifiable traits to you. So now let's have some time to sketch. So I'm going to hand you each a piece of paper, and I want you to sketch out. So we've done thumbnails in this class before. You guys remember what those are?
Yes.
Yes? Can someone tell me what a thumbnail is?
Like a little mini sketch.
Okay. So on the papers that I'm going to give you, I want to see 7 thumbnails and 3 full sketches. And the reason why I'm making you guys do so many goes back to something that I was talking about earlier when we were making our prints. Does anyone remember what I said about choosing when it comes to multiples when we started this unit?
It's just better to have like more options.
Yeah, absolutely. It's better to choose from the best of 10 than from the best of 1. So that's why I want you guys to go ahead and make a couple different sketches. So do your thumbnails first and then your full-size sketches. Thumbnails don't need to be super detailed, it's just kind of a mapping, and then your sketches you can get a little more into that. So go ahead and do that. I'll come by and give some feedback as we're working. But basically you want these to reflect the things that you identified and that your classmates saw in you as well, and you want a nice composition in there.
So we use 7 thumbnails.
Yeah. I mean, for now you can just do like 2 and then 1 sketch.
I love drawing myself and being able to make my hair be better than it actually is.
Alright, so ideally you guys would have the whole class for sketching. We're going to do a transfer in the next class, so spoiler alert.
So if you guys want to do a sketch that's that size on,
Oh.
I can give you a new piece of paper, but
Okay.
just because we'll be doing a transfer, I can give you this pencil. So whatever you decide for that, just to save us some time. Go ahead and wash this off too. Is this anyone's towel?
No.
Okay, so at this point, we could talk about your sketches and collect them, and all that jazz. But let's just move on to the next day because this is taking long. Make sure your lines are dark.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be transferred. So like, yay dark.
So cute. You're good. I just need to steal it. I'll just steal Becca's pencil. Just to get a little smile on mine. Okay.
So next day. Alright guys, welcome back to class. So yesterday we did our prep work. And we're getting ready to do some transferring and carving. How do we feel about our images that we made the other day? You guys feel pretty good? Do you like them? Is there anything you want to change? No? Okay, now would be the time to do so because from here out it's game time. We're getting ready to get this on the linoleum. So, it's been a long time coming, but we're gonna be doing transfers of our sketches onto our blocks, and then we're gonna go ahead and start carving. So, on here, I have a little sketch of an identifiable image. It's just a little dimply smile and a ponytail. So, I'm gonna align this to my block. I'm gonna steal that pencil back. And I'm gonna burnish it with a pencil. Put some pressure on there without snapping the pencil.
Do you need the graphite to be out to like?
Not really. I always feel like I do, but I don't think you need to. You can try it. As long as you're aligning it in the same spot, even if it doesn't lift,
Okay.
then you can keep going. Yeah, I've seen some people do this using a spoon, and it's worked just fine. So I would assume that it would work. Alright, so you guys can see that it made a mirror image. It is backwards, but keep in mind that as we're printing, it's going to be backwards again, so the print will be right side up. This one's backwards. So we have our transferred image, and then what I'm going to want to do is go over it with a marker. And the reason why I want to do this is because pencil smudges very easily while we're working. So everything that I want to carve away, I will put a black marker over. So why don't you guys go ahead and transfer your images onto your little blocks. Also, since you guys definitely aren't going to get all the carving done today, I'm just going to let you print off these when it's printing time.
Okay. Can I see the marker?
So remember that we want to put the black over what we want to take away. So this is the point where we would decide, do we want our figure to be black or do we want our background to be black? For the sake of consistency in this class, we would want our figure to be the black part. So that means that when we're making our print, we want to carve everything away except the figure. Does that make sense? Okay. So as you're putting your marker down, you want to make sure that the parts that you want to leave are left with the linoleum color and everything else can be made black.
Do I need to use right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for it.
since we did the carving intro, I think we can just skip the 2 carving studio days.
Yeah.
You know what you're doing. So let's pretend it is day 7. So 2 days have passed. Here are you. That's actually very close to what
Oh,
you're doing.
okay.
You suddenly grew Pocahontas hair. Congratulations.
Love it. Thank you.
So guys, we have our finished carvings. They look so much like you. And we have these substrates, which maybe you forgot about because it's been a couple days. And we finally get to see them again in all of their beautiful swirly glory. So we're going to be printing on these today. And what we're going to do is the same block printing process that we did before. But before we do that, we're going to crop. So you'll notice that these pages are significantly larger than the stamps that are in front of you. So you can go ahead and find some parts that you like, place it down, kind of imagine where it would be, and then use these scissors to cut that spot around it. So we want at least 4 to 6 different prints. Let me show you guys a little example that I did on these substrates. Actually, got a couple examples. So later, after we print these, we're going to sign them and write a print edition. So throughout art history, you'll see that when printmakers are working, they'll do multiples, and then they'll sign what their print is. So if it's the first print you do, it would be 1 out of however many prints you do. So here's an example of different print editions, and you can see the print quality of each one. Some printed much better than others. So if I were to make this an actual series of prints, there's definitely ones that I wouldn't keep. But just to show you guys the kind of variety that you get and how fun it looks over that really beautiful substrate.
Did you show your sister and your friend?
Yeah, I did. They actually helped me with the idea of this. We taught a printmaking workshop back in the summertime, and we mostly worked on the rubber stamps because it was people that had never really done like art or crafting or anything before.
Yeah.
And they really loved it. And they were like, oh man, this could be so fun for personal branding. So there's a picture of my sister and I where my hair is down and her hair is in a braid, and if you look at them next to each other, they look so like representational. It's fun. Okay. And then ideally in a class, I would review the block printing process again because it's been a couple days, but for you guys, it's only been a couple minutes.
Yeah.
So whenever you're ready to run prints, go ahead and do that. And then sign them, write your print edition.
And you want us to have 8 finished?
The more the merrier. I would reward extra credit for anything above what is required. Also with like the shaving cream prints or anything else, like if there's students that are like, I'm done, what do I do next? Just make more substrates so you can make more prints. Yeah, because when it's actual printing day, there's all the prep and everything, but then the prints themselves take like only a couple minutes. So the more you have, the better. Oh my gosh, that one's beautiful.
That's fine.
I used one of those to make a thank you card for Miss Davis. So I was like, this is too pretty.
Good.
That's sweet.
Right, you can print whenever you want, and then you are free from this project. It smells so strongly of shaving cream over here. Just this corner.
Yeah.
Are you complaining?
No, definitely not. I'm struggling.
You guys want some tape to tape that plastic down, or are you good?
I think we're good.
Yeah. A lot of shaving cream.
send this to my mom and be like, I
Oh.
printed something about myself.
Let me see.
Yeah, self-portrait.
She gave me one. It's really hard down.
I feel like she wouldn't be surprised.
No.
There is a mountain of shaving cream in the sink.
Is the shaving cream, will that, if that got on someone's clothes, would it,
It washes off.
it washes off? Okay.
The food coloring might stain depending on pigmentation of it. I bought the pink one, so it probably wouldn't stain.
Actually, I need to roll.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Let me let you go first.
And I probably, depending on the grade level, like if I did something like this in the middle school class, I'd probably have the worst marks or something. This looks like rainbow sorbet, like actual rainbow sorbet. Look at it flow on so much. That's beautiful. It looks like it does. Yeah.
I'm suing.
Oh.
Suing now.
Kind of same. I might.
It never ends.
Beautiful.
Class, hopefully you enjoyed the project.
Yes.
At this point, they would probably work a little bit bigger than these.
Yeah.
So at this point, we would mat them, put them up, and talk about them. So, cool. Yep. Thanks for listening to me go on about principles now.